Hey, how you guys doing? It's Butler here in Detroit. Excited to go live with you guys today. It's a beautiful day here. Thank goodness the weather's finally turned, and so looking forward to getting outside and doing a few things. But as you're joining us today, let me know where you're joining us from, and how to all those who are catching us a little bit later. I'm excited because we have a phenomenal guest with us today, who I believe is really going to help us to really not only make the most of the time we're in right now, but also really have the kind of impact that that we really should have after this, the kind of impact that the world needs us to have right now. And so I see we got some people from Round Rock with us, and from Houston, and from Charlotte, and hello, my girl Micah and Monique, and let's see who else is joining us. Dr. Armand, how are you doing? And Raymond, good to catch up with you. And I'm glad you're enjoying it, Raising the Grady Bunch. I still love your username. And Sterling Heights, and Tina, and Miss Clark, and others that are joining us. I see Bree's with us. Hey, Bree. So I always like to start with just what I'm thinking about today. And I'm actually going to pull from what I was reading yesterday in the Bible. Our church is reading through most of the New Testament and Psalms and Proverbs right now. And so yesterday was Philippians chapter 1. And what struck me about it was that Paul was in prison. He was in a tough place, obviously. And yet he chose to focus on the people of Philippi. I mean, the entire first chapters, him talking about their faith, their love, how he's been praying for them, how proud he was of them. He talks about how he's really been thinking about whether, it's better to go to heaven or not. In other words, he was saying, actually, it is better for me to go to heaven. But he was saying, but I'm going to stay here for you guys. I'm going to stay here to produce fruit. And what jumped out at me as a pastor was, first of all, how important it is to actually care for your people, to really care about them, really keep tabs on them, where they are, pray for them, things along those lines. But also, it's the whole you is greater than me approach. It's the idea, the understanding that it's not about me, right? It's about the people that God has called me to reach. It's about the people that God has called me to impact, that God has actually placed us here on a mission, right? And so even though we're going through tough times sometimes, even though we sometimes are looking at areas of our lives where we'd like to see God move, we can't, get to a place where we're like an ostrich in the sand, right? We're just kind of keeping our heads down and ignoring what everybody else is going through, ignoring why God brought us here. We need to approach life with the mentality of you are greater than me, that I'm here to be a blessing to you. I'm here to help you to have the kind of life God wants you to have the impact God wants you to be all God made you to be. And as you do that, God will take care of you. And so that's just something that was on my heart last night and this morning, just thinking about staying focused on the main thing, which is being a blessing, which is finding a way to bless somebody every single day, which is making sure you're doing what God called you to do so that you're helping other people experience the future that God has for them. And so just a few thoughts. And I see we got some more people that have joined us, Ronita and Queen Esther and Moody Mix and T. Foster and Deborah and so many more jumping on here. I'm going to actually right away just link in our guest. If I can find him on here, I saw him wave a little earlier because he's got some phenomenal things to say. I can't say enough about him. I think he's a leader in this country, particularly in Christian media. And so I'm going to let him just talk as soon as I can find him again. So if you can kind of wave at me again, Phil, it'd be good, because for whatever reason, it seems to have wiped out the moment earlier. There we go.
There we go. That's
Hey, how you
wonderful.
doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well, doing well. Excited to connect with you today.
Oh, it's fantastic. I'm really enjoying it. This is fun. And that was a great word, by the way, to open up. Thank you. I was listening to all of that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Definitely, we're definitely trying to focus on not just ourselves, right? Trying to find a way to be a blessing to other people. So
Yeah,
definitely important.
that's so true. So true.
So many people that are connected with me already know a lot about you, but some of them don't. So do you mind kind of letting everyone know a little bit about your background?
Sure. I'm a television producer from way back. I come from another era almost. We founded a company called Cook Media Group here in Los Angeles, and we work with many of the largest churches and ministry organizations around the world, helping them use the media more effectively. You know, it's interesting, Andre, we live in this media-driven culture, and some studies indicate people see as much as 10,000 media messages every single day. And so in that world, how in the world do we get noticed? How do we get our church out there? How do we get out there? You know, if you're a business person or a filmmaker, a creative person, a pastor, how to get your message in front of people when they're being bombarded with so much. And so we just want to help the church speak the language of today's culture. I really believe that if we can't learn to do that, and it may be online, it may be with video, it may be with social media, if we can't learn to do that effectively, we're never going to make our mark in this generation. So that's what we're excited about. And we've done some stuff with you. I've really enjoyed working with you, and you're doing a great work there in Detroit. And I just love seeing what you're doing and how you're growing and the impact you're having.
Yeah, we're excited to work with you guys. You guys have definitely been instrumental in us doing what you talked about, finding a way to communicate to the culture in their language. You know, that's a big part of things. And I saw that you blogged yesterday, I believe, an article called "Why is this the best time to reinvent yourself?" And
yeah,
it's something we've been talking about a lot in our lives.
Yes.
Mind sharing a little bit more about that?
Sure. You know, it's interesting that when we go through a crisis, people hear this constant, things are going to be different. You know, things are going to be new. It's never going to be the same. It's a new normal. We hear that over and I'm sick of it almost. We hear it so much on the news and in TV commercials. But the truth is, that means people are ready for a change. Right. And as you know, it's tough to get most people to change. I tell you, I work with pastors and ministry leaders for a living, and executives and leader guys, and it's just tough getting people to change. We just don't like it. It's uncomfortable. In fact, I did a book years ago called Jolt, how to get yourself ready for this accelerating change we live in. And one of the things I discovered was even open heart surgery patients, the vast majority within 2 years go back to their old lifestyle. You know, the eating wrong, the smoking, the drinking, the things that got them to that open heart surgery stage. So even the fear of death doesn't make most people change. So we hate it. But the truth is, coming out of a crisis like this, people are more ready. They're seeing, they're hearing constantly, this is the time to change. There's something new out there. So if you're a person, you know, an individual, whether you're a business person, a ministry leader, whatever you do, a creative person, or a church or a ministry organization, this is the time. If you ever wanted to reinvent yourself, this is the time, because people are open to it. Suddenly people are welcoming it. So I've just discovered all those things. You know, pastors, for instance, every pastor I know, and I'm sure you're one, wants to change something. Maybe it's the order of service. Maybe it's the worship team. Maybe it's the leadership of the church. Maybe it's the time we do services. Who knows? There's a lot of changes. But people fight it very often. And so times like this are the times to make those changes happen, because people are really ready. They're up for it. And so I just really encourage people, you know, whatever you want to do to reinvent your life, move to a different career, think about another line of work, or just refresh what you're doing. Maybe change your logo, your look, your branding, whatever. This is the time to rethink, reinvent, redesign. This is the moment.
Well, I think that's really important. Part of the conversation I've had with my team is just that if there's any time we can get away with something, it's right now.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, totally.
So we're like, hey, let's just try some stuff. I'm literally trying things. And then after a couple of weeks, like, oh, that didn't work. Let's try something else.
Well, let me say this. This is what I love about your attitude. And I think you're a great example of this is, I believe every church needs to have a R&D department, research and development department. Let's just try some stuff. And let's, you know, not everybody can do it. You know, half our staff is overworked already. Right. But there might be 1 or 2 or 3 people on your team that you could say, look, your job is to try new stuff. Maybe a new website, maybe a new logo. Let's just try some different things and see how they work. I know Bobby Grunwald, who leads the innovation team at Life Church in Oklahoma City. He developed the YouVersion Bible app. Right. Those are the kind of things his team does. They're just constantly thinking of how we could do things better. And you have that attitude. And I love that about you. You're just willing to try whatever it takes to get the gospel to as many people as possible. And I just think that's a great thing. And I'd encourage all pastors, all ministry leaders listening to this, think in those terms. And that's how we really have a breakthrough.
Yeah, I think that you'd be surprised sometimes what works and what doesn't, right?
That's true.
Even like doing this, we started doing this a few weeks ago, and we just had a conversation like, we're just going to do it. I saw Steph Curry do something like, I didn't know you could do that on Instagram. So our brain started working like, well, let's just start, you know, talking to people and seeing if we can help people. And what I've found is that, man, it's been rich, you know, and I'm like, I should have done this 5 years ago. So and there's some other things I've done that I'm like, this week, okay, let's stop that. That doesn't work, you know.
Yeah.
But I think it's good, you know. I think it's good to try things, and I agree with you that people are open. And for our church, you know, we're only a year and a half old, and so we were going into our second year, and we were talking about, you know, some things, but I'm almost viewing this like a relaunch. It's
Yeah.
like it can almost relaunch the church to the community, and I mean, we're looking at some facilities, and we're kind of like, you know, why not? Why not act like we're starting the church all over again, even though we're only a year and a half old?
I love that. It's the attitude we have to have. The other thing too to think about is now is also a time to advertise. You know, it sounds ironic, it sounds wrong, but study after study after study shows that businesses that advertise heavily during a crisis are the businesses that do the best when they come out of the crisis. And there's a lot of reasons for it. Some of it is the competition is less because a lot of companies pull back. And that's the same way with churches. I mean, during this crisis, we've seen a lot of churches just kind of pull back and not be out there. But I'll tell you, the churches that are out there that are talking about what they're doing during this fight, you know, we're in the fight, we're making a difference in COVID, we're ministering to our community, we're trying to help people. Those churches that are advertising, it may just be a newspaper ad, it may be a radio commercial or a TV commercial locally, whatever it is, or just paid advertisements on social media or boosting posts on social media. Those little things make such a difference. And when we emerge from the crisis, people are remembering, oh yeah, I remember that church, I'm going to go visit. And so it just for name recognition to come up on people's radar, those kind of things can be really important during times like this.
Yeah, I've noticed that just following the social media, some
Yeah.
kind of risen, you know, I knew they were there, but, you know, other people maybe didn't. I'm watching what's happening with Paul in Tulsa and with daughter,
Yeah.
of course, obviously with Matthew Burnett and LA and
Yes.
others. I can see that they're doing so much, which of course makes you want to support them. Makes
Exactly.
you
That's
to
so true.
doing what they're preaching, what's driving this. So I can see why that's so important.
Yeah. In fact, it's funny. I can look out of my office right now, and across, you know, I'm in here in LA, and I can look out across the valley here and see Walt Disney Studios, Warner Brothers Studios, Universal Studios, and guess what? They've been locked down for months. I mean, they've been totally shut down. They're like ghost towns over there on those big, massive studio lots, which means that during this shutdown, the church has been producing more media than Hollywood has.
Right.
You know, guys like you are out there creating
Wow.
stuff. And whether it's live streaming, whether it's going live on social media, whether it's doing short videos about what we're doing, the church is just an interesting thing. The only time in my lifetime that's ever happened. And so it really, you know, while Hollywood is hunkered down and nervous about, you know, in fact, my wife and I were talking last night that in the fall, we're going to see a lot of reruns because there wasn't anything being made over the summer here. But churches are out there. They're stepping up. They're filling in the gap. And so I just love the fact that leaders like you are out there making such a difference right now, creating this kind of media to make an impact on the culture. So it's just a really interesting time, I think, to be around.
Well, in regards to creatives and people in film, you know, I have an interest in film and
Yeah.
right now, and I know others do as well. And I think it's interesting what you mentioned. There's going to be a lot of reruns. There's going to be a lack of content. I mean, there's a lot of content in one sense because you can go to Netflix, Amazon Prime, et cetera, and find a truckload of content. But maybe newer content, it seems like there's an opportunity for Christians to create not just Christian ministry, but Christian entertainment that ministry. Am I right there?
You're exactly right. And here's the deal. I'm getting reports from networks, both Christian networks and secular networks, that viewership is way up. I mean, people are hunkered down. They're at home. They can't go out much. And so even though we're coming out of this crisis, we're going to continue to see people who have gotten in this habit of watching huge amounts of television. Even Christian networks all over the country have called me and said, we're getting more viewers than ever right now. People are looking for hope. You know, they're looking for answers. Right. And after a while, you get tired of Netflix. Right. You know, I feel like I've watched all that Netflix has pretty much, and you run out of that. But Christian programming, there's a real spot there. So whether you want to do stuff on a explicitly Christian network or whether you want to do a secular program, you know, mentioned Steph Curry recently, and that you know the documentary he did, jump shot documentary he just did, it's just a great example of uplifting, powerful, motivating stuff that I think more Christians ought to be out there trying to do. So yeah, I encourage people, if you're a creative person this could be your moment to step up and start really getting your voice heard.
So what steps would a creative take right now, maybe to reinvent themselves? I mean, what is it that if I'm sitting here and I'm saying, man, I've got so much in me, I do need to make a change. I don't know what step to take next. I mean, what do you think? What we
Well,
talk
there's two areas I would really encourage people to think about. One is perception. You know, half of getting your voice out there, half of getting your message heard is having other people listen. And so we have to think about, how do people perceive us? And sometimes that has to do with your web presence, your social media presence. You know, I talked to a guy the other day that wants to be a social media expert. He said, that's my calling, is to be a social media expert. And I looked at his social media, and his picture is a kitten. He's got a kitten picture on his Instagram feed. I'm thinking, what does that say about your expertise in social media? We need to think our social media presence, our web presence, because we want to let people know we're professional. We may be a writer or a designer or a filmmaker, whatever. We need to let people know. So think in terms about your presence. The other thing I would think people should do is, don't worry so much about having that aha moment. I'm really big on this right now, Andre. I think people get so obsessed with that eureka moment. An idea hit me. It came out of the blue. We have this idea that's what creativity is. But the truth is, I don't believe in the eureka moment as much as I believe in the weeks, months, sometimes years of preparation that went into that eureka moment. You know, we always talk about J.K. Rowling, who created Harry Potter.
Right.
She had this eureka moment with Harry on a train from Manchester, England to London. And the train got delayed. She's sitting there bored out of her mind. And suddenly she says, the Harry Potter thing just popped into her mind. And the whole 7-book series, she said this whole realization happened. And she's gotten stuck on this idea that it was a eureka moment. But what people don't know is, since she was a little kid, she was a voracious reader. She was reading about the supernatural world, about, you know, wizards and science fiction stuff. She, in fact, she read so much when she was at the university, she got a 50-pound fine for checking out too many books. Then her brother-in-law opened a coffee shop, and she'd spend hours at her brother-in-law's coffee shop reading, studying, and writing. So really that eureka moment only happened because she'd spent years and years learning, growing, developing, reading. And so I just encourage people, if you want to be a screenwriter, you need to be writing every single day. Do the prep work, do the foundational work, because it's not going to just happen. So many people, I get people that just tell me, Phil, I want to publish a book. Well, what have you written? Well, I haven't written anything yet. I'm waiting to meet an agent, or I'm waiting to meet a publisher. No. When you meet that publisher, if you don't have something to show him, you're not going to get anywhere. So whoever you are as a creative person, and let me tell you, even a filmmaker, there are 2 film festivals in the United States right now just for movies made on iPhones. So don't tell me you can't go out and make a film. There's a lot of opportunity out there. So I just really encourage creative people, get serious about what God's called you to do, and it can really open up doors.
Well, that's really good. And I think one of the things that I came across, and this is kind of similar, but, you know, with social media being a big thing, and I know for me, that was something God put on my heart years ago.
Yeah.
You kind of go looking for that viral post, right? And you hear like the Mike Todd story. It was just one tweet and bam, it just exploded.
Yeah.
And, you can almost get to the place where you're trying to make every post viral. And I ran across maybe, I think it was Gary V, who, you know, I paid attention to it, even though I kind of filter out all the cuss words and everything.
That's
great post about, you know, don't stop looking for viral, just be consistent. And I'm hearing something similar here in terms of just create content, right? And just keep putting it out there, keep writing, keep, you know, developing your gift, keep, you know, and even for me, as someone who likes to write scripts, I hear you say write every day, and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, I need to do that, you know, and stop just waiting for certain things.
Yeah, and you know, a big part of it is creating a routine. I find that, and it's hard for me because I'm a creative person, and generally we deal with what's urgent. And I know you as a pastor face this all the time. So I'll come into the office in the morning, and I have every intention of working on my next book. But suddenly I see the email starts popping up. I get, you know, Instagram messages. I get all kind of stuff popping up, and suddenly we get distracted. And before we know it, the day's blown. And so we really have to get serious. I read a book on the routines of really brilliant artists and writers and thinkers, and a book by Mason Curry called Daily Routines. And it's interesting that he charted 60 creative people over the last 200 years, And he discovered that they were all slaves to routine. I mean, they really were serious about their routines, and they did whatever it took. They would lock themselves in their office. One guy got Victor Hugo that wrote Les Mis. He would literally take his clothes off, give them to his assistant, have his assistant take him into another room, so he could not leave naked. So he was stuck in his office writing for a certain number of hours every single day. It just took that. And whatever it takes for you, I don't recommend you run around writing naked, but whatever it takes, people need to get into that routine. Because what happens is when your body gets into a routine, your brain starts clicking, saying, okay, when I sit in that chair, it's time to write. And you start getting serious about it. So it's really more of a get away from the wishful thinking and get into a really regular routine. And that makes a huge difference for people.
Yeah, that's good. I'm so convicted over here.
Well, by the way, let me say something. You mentioned Mike Todd in Tulsa. What's funny about Mike, that is a viral thing. And he got known relatively quick. But the truth is, for a long time, he'd been posting videos on YouTube. His messages, he'd been cranking them out. He had this huge library of messages that he'd been building up his channel. And then when that moment happened, when somebody famous happened to see one of his messages, it seemed like a random thing. But once they started talking about it, people went and realized, holy smoke, this guy's got a ton of stuff. I need to get into that. And people just started jumping into this huge amount of content Mike had created. So I think the idea, it just really supports the idea that build, 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 build. And whatever God chooses to make that moment happen, that eureka moment happen, suddenly you're ready to go. And people are out there watching. So it's a great story. And you're doing that right now. I mean, you're posting stuff. And one thing I love about what you're doing is, I tell pastors, it's not just about that Sunday live stream. It's about connecting with people during the week. Just what you're doing, Instagram interviews, just going on an Instagram live and sharing with people from your heart. What's going on with the church? What's my vision for Sunday? Doing it on Facebook. Those connections during the week, particularly during the shutdown period, have been absolutely critical to help keep that connection going with your followers, with your congregation. So I think you're doing exactly the right thing.
Well, thank you. We're trying. We're trying a whole bunch of stuff, but it's been fun too. I have to say that as a pastor, just connecting with your people regularly is cool. Being able to do it in this way, because in a season like this, normally you wouldn't see them, right? You wouldn't,
right?
And so I've enjoyed that too. And that was the next thing I was going to ask you about. Actually, was your thoughts for pastors right now during this time. I know one part of it is what we just talked about. Another part, people are talking about going to buildings. I got a message this morning, a pastor, we're going to go into a building and all of that. And so, I've been kind of going back and forth of communicating with people, my thoughts. And I don't know, I got a lot in my head there, but any thoughts there?
Oh, that's brilliant. You're doing the right thing. Well, here's my thought. First of all, don't let off the gas when it comes to your live stream as we move back into the building. One thing we've discovered is that is a legitimate congregation out there. I've had pastors tell me coming into the shutdown, I've had pastors tell me, Phil, I don't mind doing the live stream, but that's not real ministry. I don't really consider the online world real ministry. Well, let me tell you, they've changed their mind in the last 6 or 8 weeks. And so I think we know that's legit. And the thing is, we need to continue treating that online audience the same way we treat our live congregation. So when we get in that building, and I'll tell you why, Andre, I've had churches, we've worked with churches. Our team at Cooke Media Group has worked with churches over the last number of years that they treat their live stream the same way they treat their live congregation. And in those cases, we're seeing some live stream audiences give as much as 1/3 of a church's total income just from their live stream audience. In fact, I had one pastor of 6,000 members in the building. He told me one Sunday last summer, his live stream audience gave more than a 6,000 member congregation. So, and it only happens because he welcomes them every Sunday. He looks in that camera, makes them feel a part of the church. They feel like they're part of a campus. And so, number one, don't let off the gas. Keep being intentional. I know it's a lot of work, but be intentional about cultivating that live stream audience. It's so important. The other thing I would say is when you do move into a new building, remember, it's not a legal issue as much as a behavioral issue. I don't care what the government says. People will come in when they feel comfortable. So in your excitement about encouraging people to come back to church, don't make the ones that are nervous about it feel shamed. Don't make them feel embarrassed. they're going to come back when they're ready. And so some people just naturally take longer to feel comfortable in that environment, particularly those with other health issues and stuff. So I really encourage you to do that. But the last thing I would say is this is the time to activate your volunteers. Even for those listening who aren't in their building yet, pastors sometimes only think of volunteers in terms of at the building and what they're doing, the day of the service. But right now, volunteers could be calling your congregation, getting them excited about coming back to the building, praying for them, encouraging. Volunteers could be start working. What's the strategy we're going to have when we move back in? What are we going to do about cleaning our building? What are we going to do about welcoming people in? Should we have spaces out there for people? Right now, I would be really motivating and really getting your volunteer team in action, because they can start helping you even now online. They can be a great, be in your chat room to help answer questions from people. There's so many things that volunteers could do. So I just encourage people, pastors, don't wait till you get in the building. Let's start motivating and mobilizing. That's the word I was looking for. Mobilizing volunteers right now. That's an important thing to do.
That's good. That's good. A lot of them, they basically have had a break. So
yeah, that's true.
Rested, and in some cases, itching to get to work, trying to find something to help their church. So
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, I'll tell you this, and I don't want to rant, but I'll tell you this. I got an interesting letter, or I got a phone call the other day from a friend of mine who pastors 900 people in Alabama. Great church, old friend of mine, and he said, I pastor 900 people. He said, before the shutdown, we had 28 subscribers to my YouTube channel. He said, now we have 25,000 subscribers. He said, my Sunday message has been viewed by 1.5 million people on YouTube. He said, we're having hundreds of thousands of views of our service every Sunday. He said, honestly, I feel guilty saying this, but I'm not in a hurry to get back in the building. He said, we're ministering to more people online than we've ever ministered to in the history of our church. And so I'm just so proud of guys like you and my friend who are just really stepping up during this really difficult time and doing some remarkable things online to minister to their church. So I just, you've done a great job, Andre, and your church has done a great job. And I want to see you grow, and I think you're doing all the right things, and I'm really proud of what you're doing, because Detroit needs this message right now. Really, people are looking for hope. They're losing their jobs, and so I'm so proud that you're stepping up and making that happen.
No, thank you. We're doing it with you all's help, that's for sure. Definitely doing it with you guys' help. One other question I'll ask, but what do you see as the future of Christian television or ministry in light of this? For example, I've got one broadcast on one television network. I just started in March, and I believe God told me to do it. And we're seeing results. But the other side of it is I'm looking at what's happening with the internet, and I'm almost like, should I stay on television? Should I just go in? Or what's this going to look like in a few years? And I see people doing both. I wonder what your thoughts are on it.
Well, let me tell you something we've done that's kind of, we never expected during this shutdown. We have 4 churches that we've been working with, one in New Orleans, Honolulu, Oklahoma City, and Cincinnati. 4 churches that have taken their live stream onto a local television station. So we've helped them edit they do their live stream on Sunday. Then the following week, we help them edit it into a 30-minute television program. And then we're putting it on local television. They felt like, I want the community to see what God's doing during the shutdown at our church. And so they're so excited because they see the potential of opening up. And what we've discovered is, and we could trace this back to work we did with Lakewood Church and a lot of other big churches around the country, that when you do a local program, it draws a lot of attention to your church. And the goal of that local program should be to drive people to the building. We really want to help increase our membership. So what these churches are doing, they're just seeing amazing results, that suddenly people who would never darken the door of their church or never hear about their church, suddenly these people are finding out about this church here in town, and I'm going to check it out and I'm going to go visit. So I think it's difficult because it seems like it's hard to get people to support that. It's hard to see immediate results, but television is just a vast audience. And the thing to remember for me is, it's not how we want to reach people with the gospel. It's how they want to reach us. It's how they want to connect with us. And so some people do like social media. Some people like live streaming. Other people like television. They like to watch television. And so you're more likely to reach a certain crowd through TV. So I look at all the options, and certainly you never want to put the church in financial, difficulty. However, if it's possible, I think what you're doing, even starting small, you'll see it eventually grow, and the investment is going to reap a harvest. So I just encourage you to don't wipe television off the slate. Don't think television's too expensive for me. There's a lot of options out there, particularly in local TV. And it is an interesting opportunity that churches are now putting their live stream on, and they're going to want to continue. In fact, one of those churches, Church of the King in New Orleans, they're on 3 local stations now and just did a contract for the next year. They really want to launch a television outreach in their community in New Orleans for their church. So it's just interesting how some people are approaching that.
That's good. I hadn't really thought about it like that. That's very helpful. Yeah. So thank you so much for hanging with us and going live with us. And I know you've got so much going on from, is it Cooke Pictures? Is that the name of your company?
Media Group. Yeah, we changed the name. Cooke Media Group in LA.
Blog and number of books, big way back and unique and so many. Yeah. So guys, people can find me at my blog probably the best at philcooke.com. I'm Cooke with an E, as you know, Phil, Philcooke. And that's where I write about this stuff. And if pastors are listening, you can get some resources on my blog. The last 15 or 20 posts have really been focused on this COVID-19 shutdown and how we respond. So I'm thrilled that churches are making such an impact, and we're here to help. Thank you so much. I appreciate you hanging out with us. And
thank you, Andre.
God's going to do, and looking forward to working with you some more in the future.
Sounds good, man. Take care.
See you guys later.